So England is superly depressing right now because for over a week now it's just been cloudy, slightly rainy. Maybe not raining the whole time, but just you can see, but just cloud. Some of them dark patches. But it's basically the weather has been like that every single day for the last over a week, and I have no reason to get out of bed if there's no sun to sunbathe in. I think 1 or 2 days in the last 10 days I've been here, and there's a tiny peeking. Occasionally you get tiny peekings where the sun just kind of comes out like that, and then it kind of just disappears and stays disappeared for a long time. But yeah, so I always find that I get really depressed when I can't sunbathe, and yeah. But it's not that my house is a lot warmer. I have noticed they took out the old. There's like some stuff in between the walls, and they've used some sort of fan to blow it all out. And then they put in some new filler. But they said that this one is a lot. Yeah, they said there wasn't that much of the last one, so it was kind of like only half full, which means that hopefully it's going to be warmer. And it is. I'm noticing it is warmer ever since they've done that. But yes, I came to a realization yesterday as to why there's so many Muslim or technically I would say Arabic might actually be a better word. Arab, because an Arab is a race, and I keep using the word Asian, and then I kind of realize, well, Asian kind of includes China and Japan, and I wouldn't, then they're not Islamic, so I can't really call them that. And there's a type of person when you can't tell if they're Islamic or not, but they look it, but that doesn't mean that they are it. And so yeah, I think Arab probably is actually the word that I would use if I can't work out if someone is Middle Eastern or, well, see, even Middle Eastern, because technically Jews are supposed to be Middle Eastern. So even if I call the Middle Eastern look, technically a Jewish look is a Middle Eastern look. So I find it hard to, you want to refer to a type of look that looks Islamic, but you don't know what to call it because they might not be Islamic, and you can't really call them Asian because that might kind of think you're talking about Chinese people, and you can't really call them Middle Eastern because then they could be talking about African or Jewish. So yeah, Arab I think is probably a better word. And I'm not saying all Arabs are bad. No, definitely not. There are some very intelligent. There's some, I had loads of clients that were Arab, and I liked them, and I wouldn't have minded seeing them again. But because I've been posting tons of anti-Islamic things, and Arab people are often linked to Islam because of family or just heritage or whatever. Technically, people who are modern day thinking can be anywhere, any race and stuff. So, but yeah, Arab I guess is actually probably the correct term that I should use, because it makes it clear that I'm not talking about Chinese people, nor am I talking about African people. Arab. But yeah, I saw actually a clip today where Tommy was speaking to a group of people. It might be in Israel. I know he's in Israel now, but I don't know if this clip was actually taken from a few years ago or something. But he said that he thought Keir Starmer was going to be in power for the next 3 years. And I don't know if this is an old clip, because I'm seeing lots of problems and lots of hatred against him. So I'm hoping, I wouldn't think that it would be a good idea to have him in power for at all. I think he should come out, but at the same time, having said all the things that I said yesterday about why there are so many Arab people here, I don't know if they're Islamic or not, but that's why it's better to call them Arab, because I don't know if they're as Islamic or if they're just born into an Islamic family or perhaps have Islamic roots, but that's it. And so, but yeah, I don't know why there's so many of them here, but I know that there are a lot, and I'm thinking about how the housing market is just a big scam right now, because people cannot save. They are earning £2,000 a month, and they're spending them 75% of that on rent, and the rest goes on tax, and literally there's nothing else after that. So many people cannot save. They cannot earn. They cannot, and they're basically the only way they can they can buy a property is if they take out a gigantic mortgage, a mortgage that basically is like an agreement where they have to pay the banks huge amounts of money every single year for the rest of their life. So they basically have turned into slaves. So the whole of England now is a bunch of slaves. And I think a lot of smart people, whether they be whatever race, whatever country, they're realizing that they need to leave. The problem is, though, I feel like this problem is happening everywhere. I mean, Dublin is in Ireland, and yet I've heard that the housing market is even higher there. So and so I don't, I feel like there's this whole banking scam, and it's obviously the bankers who are globalists and who are controlling the whole world, and they've done something to Europe. They made Europe look really nice and pretty, and then the housing market started getting higher and higher, and everyone wanted to live in Europe. And I think the globalists are the ones, not the Europeans. A lot of people are blaming it on the Europeans, but I think it's the globalists that are the ones who are saying anyone can come into Europe, providing you can, take out a giant mortgage, pay your rent, pay your mortgage. I think rent and mortgage is actually kind of a similar thing now, only the difference is you own a property. So when you are a rent slave, you're paying all this money to someone, and you're never going to sit it back. At the end, you're never going to own the property. The property might be worth so much more, and so you would be tempted to take out a mortgage instead, because at least then once you agree to become a slave for 10, 20 years, usually 20 years now, a lot of them are 20 or 25 years mortgages, but you agree to become a slave because of that. I mean, if you have a high salary, maybe your mortgage is considerably less than what your salary is, but if it's, because the housing market is so high, most people have to pay back huge amounts each year, and so that they've basically signed their life away almost, and therefore I think the globalists are just thinking about money, and they're just thinking about, we don't care what race, what age, whereabouts in the world you're from, so long as you've got so much deposit, so long as you've got a 40 or 20 or 40,000 pound deposit, and so long as you're willing to pay a huge amount of money each month to pay off this debt, so long as you're doing that, we don't care where you go. And I think this is probably what's enticed lots and lots of people from the Middle East, from lots of, because Arab people, there wasn't that many Arabs in Europe, and when I was born, there was not that many Arabs in here, and therefore they've kind of opened the border up. It almost feels like they have deleted the borders. People are saying that that we protect our borders and stuff like that, but it almost feels like the globalists have destroyed the borders and said, you can go anywhere you want, so long as you pay this, so long as you pay off your mortgage, or so long as you have the money to take out a mortgage. And I think smart people are realizing that it's better to buy a property, because then you don't become a slave to the bank owners. But who the smart ones are, I don't know, because a lot of Arabs are leaving, and is Dubai any better? I think if you're an Arab and you're in an Arab country, you have the it's more wise. I think it's smarter. If I was white, I would want to be in a white country, because I'd feel like these people, even though they might not be similar to me, they would probably feel a bit more loyalty or trust to me just because I look like them. I know race and being racist is wrong, but at the same time I know that you have to recognize and acknowledge that this is something that mildly people feel more comfortable around people who look similar to them. Like, I feel more comfortable around women. Why? Because I am a woman, I look like a woman, I have more similarity with a woman. So to ignore that isn't, if you are an Arab person and you've taken out a gigantic mortgage by an Arab company, I think the Arab people are going to be more sympathetic towards you because you have this similarity. And therefore, the Arab nations are probably a better place for Arab people because of the similarity that you have with the country and the history's country and stuff like that. So, so, but on the other hand, I think there are a lot of people in England who have invested huge amounts in a house and taken out a gigantic mortgage, and they realize that the housing market is about to crash, and they're now wanting to sell their property, and they don't care who they sell it to, because they don't, like, that's how I'm not feeling that way right now, but I'm definitely feeling like I do not want to buy another 10% of my sister's house, because I know she would be buying it. I'd be buying it at 180,000. I'll be paying 10% of 180,000, and I don't want to pay that. I really feel like the housing market crash is going to be very, very quick. You know, if I would have bought 5 years ago, not only would I have paid less money, so I paid 43 now, but not only would I have bought it for about for 40, I would have also been making all the money on it each year. So every year I would have made £2,000, so that works out to be £10,000 over the last. Okay, COVID was a bit bad, so it probably been £8,000. I probably would have made about £8,000. I would have paid £4,000 less and made £8,000 interest over the years. But yeah, now that I think that the crash is really, really close, I feel like housing is a completely not a good investment. Why? Because even if you are making interest, a couple of thousand interest each year, you know, if the crash is around the corner and you are risking losing all of your money because the housing market is about to drop, you know, I think that's what's going to happen. People are going to talk about the Galactic Federation and the other planets and the other worlds, and so many people are going to believe it. But they're not going to believe it at first. But when they start seeing that I am able to talk through time and space, they're going to believe that we are living in a matrix, that we're living in a simulation, that bodies are just bodies, and the soul, you know, is something different and separate and being controlled or juggled by the matrix. You know, once people start believing that and knowing that's the truth through me, they would be wanting to go elsewhere, to another place, give up on this planet and go somewhere else. And when that happens, when a lot of people start leaving, the housing market is going to start crashing. People are going to realise, because a lot of people have bought up like loads of houses in hopes of just renting it out and making money. But yeah, if you've spent huge amounts on that and you realise that actually every single year the housing market is actually just going to crash, you know, you're going to want to sell your property. But if there's a huge number of people wanting to sell their property at the same time, they're going to find that the market comes down so much quicker, so much faster than they realise. Hence, I do not want to invest 10 more percent in the property in Birmingham, actually. You know, I paid £3,000 more than I wanted to on this quarter section, and I'm only going to make 2,500 for this year. And so therefore I've basically just bought it at the same price that I would have paid back in 2019, plus all the extension work, plus I paid the extra for the extension work and stuff. But, you know, technically I haven't been making any profit over this time because Sophie owned it back then. So I'm not very good at maths, but I feel like I'm better in my head than I am in speaking. Sometimes I get the calculations right in my head, but when I speak out the words, I say the numbers all wrong, and then I watch back the video and I seem like I'm incredibly bad at maths because I've just said all the numbers wrong. Like I say 150,000 is £150 or 1,500. I don't know. Sometimes I see it in visions, and then I say out the vision, but I actually say out a different type of vision, leaving out a naught or something. I don't know. I keep saying words wrong. So I think I'm better at maths than I sound, because I keep making mistakes in when I'm talking about money. But yeah, I'm thinking about it on how would other people feel if they've put lots of investments into properties and they want to get the money that they've worked for out. You know. I think banks probably have a very low interest, but at the same time, banks are going to be the ones that end up on top. Why? Because if someone dies and if there's no one to inherit that money that they had in the account, technically the account is only accessible by the bankers, hence they'll just be able to make huge amounts of money from these. And I've heard about, actually, someone told me that it's possible to write off a loan. Now that didn't make any sense to me. How can you write off a loan? Like, if money is real, you know, if you've earned so much in working so many hours and you've got this money and then you've bought something, why should you just be able to say you've paid rent for a long time, why should it just be written off at a certain point? I mean, technically, maybe the reason why it can be written off is because the bankers know that you should not have bought that property at that price. That property was actually worth 50,000 according to the number of jobs or the amount of money that people have in the area. That job should have been that house should have been cost 50,000, but you paid 200,000. You can't pay off this mortgage. You've paid off 100, so you've paid off what the house is actually worth, but you've still got another £100,000. If the bankers liked you and said, I'm happy to write this loan off, because I know the reality of the situation is that all the housing market is a complete scam, and you never should have paid that much in the first place. And okay, I would have argued that, well, there was other people that would have wanted to pay less, but they couldn't because this person offered a high amount. So isn't it unfair for the people who would have wanted to live in that house but couldn't afford it because they didn't want to take out a bigger loan, a bigger risk? Isn't that very unfair? And it is very unfair. But I just think the whole thing is unfair. The whole thing of tricking people into thinking that they can only take out a gigantic mortgage to avoid high rents, when really they've actually just become a slave by taking out that. But if they have been paying back to the bankers who literally just sit and do nothing and feed pigeons and think that they're helping people, when really they're just trying to make huge amounts of money off all this interest, and I don't know. I think it's complicated. If there's some people that love money and love getting rich and love getting wealthy, getting rich and getting wealthy is all they care about, and they don't actually have any reason why. Like I stopped working. One of the reasons why is because I didn't know what I was working for any longer. I always wanted to buy a property so I can renovate it, do it up, buy a bigger property, renovate that, do it up, buy a bigger property. That was kind of my goal. And then when I realized that the housing market was going up more than I could make, I started seeing the housing market as a fake market. When I went to Thailand in, I think it was 2008, but it might, because I went every year for like 5 years, so it might have been the second time I went. But there was a guy, Giri, Giri, and Jerry, I think that is Giri or something. I could never pronounce it. But yeah, we were having a big conversation about how the whole housing market is completely fake and it's way too much, and people aren't able to save that much, and yeah, he didn't know though at the time that 2008, that was actually a very good time to buy because the housing market was going to get so much worse. But yeah, we had a very long conversation about how we thought the housing market was just way too high and no one could get on. But that's crazy, because this was back in 2008 or 2009. The housing market was actually incredibly cheap back then. So yeah, he must be completely shocked. He didn't buy, and if you didn't buy, well, you're going to find yourself in trouble. I think people are buying these gigantic mortgages, taking out these gigantic mortgages just because they're afraid that it's going to be so expensive that they're not going to be able to afford anything to house themselves and in the future and stuff. But yeah. A lot of people I've spoken to thought the housing market is fake, but yeah, this was all back 10 years ago. So to think that it's just gone up higher, I don't think it's gone up a huge amount in Birmingham, but it's slowly going up. And yeah, considering the number of people that are spending all their money, all their income on rent, they can't save and stuff. But if this is the reason why you've got Keir Starmer as being the leader, because he's kind of Arab friendly, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. I'm not saying all Arabs are bad, but he's being Muslim friendly though. I think he's being Muslim friendly, but maybe that's because he knows that there are a lot of Arabs that are buying up properties, and he's being Muslim friendly to accommodate these people. But maybe the only reason why these people are being accommodated all over Europe is because the bankers are hoping to give them these gigantic loans. And okay, if they rent out, they're going to make huge amounts of money, but if they convince these people to take out, to use the money that they've made over the last year to take out another mortgage, to have another house, if the more money you have, instead of putting it into one property and saying, right, that property is now mine, but if you choose to have it in like 10 different properties and say, I own 20% of all these houses, if the housing market was to half, you'd lose everything. And maybe that's why the bankers are actually gaining control. The bankers seem to be gaining control of the whole of Europe, because they have a huge number of people like my sister who just want to take out as much money as they possibly can, so they can claim I've rich. Oh, I've got a house that's worth $1 million. I've got a house that's worth 200,000. I've got a house that's worth 500,000. I've got this house, that house, this house. When in reality, the banks actually own the lion's share of all of them, And every time they get rich, these people get richer. They are thinking that they're getting richer because they own more properties, but really by owning these properties, you actually have to take on the responsibility of making sure that you get the rent. You have to take on the responsibility of making sure that the houses are looked after. You have to do the work. You have to of renovating or fixing or servicing or stuff like this. If a and you're the one that's taking the risk. If a tornado comes and blows your house up or destroys it, or if your roof gets severe damage, you're the one that's going to have to shove out the money. So the bankers are literally doing nothing but creating a false housing market. But yeah, if the housing market is about to crash, then all these people are going to find that everything gets taken off them and given to the banks. Okay, that the housing market would be massively smaller, and the banks don't actually want all these houses. What's the point? You can only live in one house. There's no point of having 1 million houses if you can only live in one. So the bankers don't actually want to live in these houses. They just want to have them at a very high price so that they can try and control the market, so that they have a huge amount of money and these people paying rent or a mortgage each month. But I guess this gives them the power is if they want to write off mortgages because they know that this whole thing is just a big scam. I suppose it gives them power, but who are owning the banks? I do not know who owns the banks. And is there a bunch of Arabs who own the banks? Yes, probably. There is probably loads of Arabs owning. I don't know. I have no clue. But yeah, the governments can't turn against the bankers because the governments are basically owned by the bankers. If the bankers own the houses, the property, they basically own the land. People have fought wars, but they fought them by not fighting wars to earn land. They've created a banking system that is a one world banking system. If you're against a one world banking system, well, the one world banking system already exists. It's just I think it looks like it's not one world banking system because every country has like, you have the euro and then you have sterling and American dollar and have all these different other currencies. So it looks like there's no one world banking system, but there is, because the one world banking system controls how much money these things are worth. England, I have to stay in England because the pound is worth so little compared to, America is a lot more expensive, and the money that I have would not last very long in America because cheese is like £12 over there. Cheese is £2 here. So if I want to buy things, I can buy things quite easily here. Okay, our electric is very high, but right now I do not need to have the heating. I'm not cold in any way, so I don't need the heating on right now. So the heating I think the heating only really needs to be on sort of November through till March. But I'm depressed about the sun though, because when it's sunny, this can stay charged. If it's like sunny all day, this can stay charged for about 6 hours. But if it's cloudy like this, I can be charging for 3 days and I still only get about an hour of it. So it's so depressing and miserable. Clouds, just looks like that every single day, and it's done that for about 10 days. So not particularly happy, but yeah, if the whole point of Keir Starmer being in power for the next 10 years is or next 3 years, I don't think it's going to last for 3 years, but I don't know why he's still in power. I don't know why he hasn't been removed, but if the idea of this is to try and convince Muslims and Arab people in general that the government does support them, does help them, they're going to be encouraged to take out these gigantic loans, and whoever is left with when the housing market crash happens, that's when the banks are going to be able to repossess homes. They're not going to want to keep them. They're going to want to sell them on. But yeah, they'll have to sell them on at a more realistic price. But at the same time, if people are in £200,000 debt, they're not going to be able to buy anything, even if the houses are just 50,000. If you've got all your money invested in properties that have huge mortgages on them, you're not going to be allowed to take out the 50,000 you need to buy, a house at a normal rate, at the crashed rate. But yeah, and I was hoping that something would happen this year, like this Halloween maybe, but I just feel like it's less and less happening. It's less and less likely to happen. My dad has booked a holiday. Technically, I don't have to go with him. The flight's only about £100, so I don't have to go with him. So it would be nice if the rapture happened on Halloween or something. But I still want the 40-day warning, and I have not received that, and it's only 10 days away from Halloween. So I don't think it's going to be this year. In which case, it's going to be next year, and so that means the crash. I don't know. The crash might have. I don't know, because if you're coming to get me on April next year, I don't think I'll be ready to talk to people by June, July. I know I want to reveal myself June, July. And if you come to me on April 3rd, April, May, June, is 3 months enough time? No, I don't think so. But then again, if I am exposed, I don't know if I'm actually going to be doing that much. Like, technically, I just need to have some interviews where people are tested about how they think about me being God, and I want to just have lots of interviews. Now, do I need to spend 6 months doing that, or do I need to spend 9 months doing that? I don't know. But on one hand, I feel like I'm in control because my higher self is doing everything, but on the other hand, I feel like I have no control because I feel like the YouTubers are the people who run YouTube are the ones that are keeping me in some sort of prison, and humans just don't give a shit. And so, I want to talk to Rob, I want to talk to Tommy because of because he said that YouTube's against him and the government's against him and a lot of people are against him, BBC are against him, but I don't necessarily think that's the truth. I feel like he might just be saying this as a type of puppet show for the government, or for the people, for the public, for the public, that he's just being like a puppet for them so that they don't associate him with the government or BBC or whatever, the globalists or whatever. So if he's against all them and people are against him, they won't be against the other people. But at the same time, I feel like he might actually be controlled by these people, the people who own YouTube, and therefore if YouTube's not against him, then I don't feel like I should be against YouTube. I'm against YouTube for what they've done to me, but I'm against the world for what they've done to me, so I have to see it from that perspective too. But yeah, if YouTube are against him, I would turn against YouTube. But I do want to know. I would want to speak to him and find out his circumstances of what's actually the truth